Okay, our thesis is in place, and now we just need to write our introductory sentences. What do you think we should include? Wait, that probably makes no sense. Let me back up and give you some context. We've been exploring how metaphysical poets use language to impact their audiences. Now, I've been asked to prepare some formal lab reports to share our analysis with the language committee. These aren't quick responses. I'm writing full essays here. Good news, I already have the tools. CER has been our go-to for structuring analysis. I'll use that same basic format, but with a few adjustments. In an essay, we call the claim the thesis statement, and we get to expand it with even more evidence and reasoning. With longer analysis, like essays, introduction paragraphs are especially important. Readers need context before they can understand the argument you're making about the text you've analyzed. We've already analyzed the text and prepared arguments in previous lessons. Now, I'm ready to write the introduction, but I'm staring at a blank page, wondering how to get started. Oh, I know who can help. Renaissance Man. He is great with background information. Uh-oh. Looks like we're on our own today. Could you help me decide what I should write about in my introduction paragraph? For today's mission, you'll decide which details about a rhetorical situation will best introduce a variety of thesis statements. Then you'll write introductory sentences that explain the rhetorical situations so your readers understand where the author's arguments are coming from. Grab your guided notes and let's get started. So, you know how every video in this course starts by giving you, the student, some important context about the author, the time period, or the purpose behind the text? That helps you make sense of what you're reading before you dive into analysis. When you write a rhetorical analysis essay, you can guide your readers the same way to help them understand where an author's argument is coming from and why it matters. And the introduction paragraph is the first step. I know a strong introduction paragraph always ends with the thesis statement because it sets up the whole argument of the essay. And I already have the thesis statements for the reports I need to prepare. So let's work on writing introductory sentences that set up the most important context for each thesis. To get started, check out the 3 thesis statements I'll use for my 3 separate reports. What similarities and differences do you notice about these? Pause the video to make some notes. All 3 thesis statements are about metaphysical poetry, but each one has a slightly different focus. The first focuses on logic in Donne's poem, while the second focuses on emotion. The third brings in a second poem by Herbert and focuses on values it shares with Donne's poem. The differences in focus mean we'll need different details in our introductions to support each one. Let's start by considering how to introduce this thesis statement. By appealing to logic, Donne leads his audience through a carefully structured argument that proves true love remains constant, even in physical absence. First, let's unpack what this thesis is saying. I'm claiming that Donne is making a logical argument. His poem isn't just emotional. It's carefully structured to lead the reader step by step through a reasoned idea that true love stays strong, even when the people are far apart. He's appealing to the reader's intellect more than their feelings. So now we ask, what background information would help a reader understand this thesis? Take a look at the rhetorical situation snapshot. It's a lot of information. Including all of it might overwhelm the reader, so we just want the details that support this thesis about logic and structure. Read the rhetorical situation snapshot and choose 2 to 4 details that would be most helpful when introducing this thesis. Pause the video to make your selections. There's no right or wrong answer here, and you could choose to introduce the thesis in a lot of different ways. So let's think through some key ideas together. First, we need to clearly state the poem's title and the poet's full name in our introduction. This helps our readers know exactly which text and author the analysis is focused on. Then, look at the audience. Donne was writing for educated peers who appreciated clever logic and structured arguments. That detail matters because it explains why Donne chose to use logic in his poem. He knew his audience could be persuaded by that kind of argument. Next, look at how Donne writes. He's known for using conceits to build layered arguments. These were intentional tools to help his audience follow a logical path. This shows how Donne makes his appeal to logic. And finally, think about the context of the Renaissance. People during this time were really interested in big, abstract ideas. That's why Donne's logical argument would have felt natural and compelling to his readers. So, how could we use all of these details to write 2 to 3 introductory sentences that clearly set up the thesis? Here's one way we could do it. John Donne's poem, A Valediction, Forbidding Mourning, was written during the Renaissance, a time when writers explored complex ideas through reason and reflection. Donne used extended comparisons and layered arguments to reach an audience that valued clever logic and structured thinking. We introduced the poem and poet, established context about Renaissance ideas, and highlighted Donne's use of logic and structure to impact his audience. Now let's try this again with another thesis statement. By appealing to his audience's emotions, Donne presents love as a constant force that surpasses physical presence and even the finality of death. This time the focus is on emotion rather than logic. Read the rhetorical situation snapshot and choose 2 to 4 details that would be the most helpful for introducing this thesis. Pause the video to make your selections. For the second thesis, we need to shift our focus to the emotional side of Donne's poetic argument. We might include that the poem was written as a farewell before a long journey, which adds emotional depth and shows why love and separation mattered to him. We could also mention Donne's ability to blend logic and emotion, since this poem appeals to both the heart and the mind. And we'll still want to keep the Renaissance context, especially the idea that writers at the time were exploring human experience in deep and reflective ways. Now it's your turn. Using the details we've selected, write 2 to 3 sentences to introduce this thesis statement. Here's one way we might put it all together. A Valediction, Forbidding Mourning by John Donne was written as a farewell before a long journey, giving the poem a personal and emotional weight. Like many Renaissance writers, Donne explored deep human experiences, blending logic and emotion to help his audience reflect on love's lasting power. This version sets up the thesis by helping the reader understand the emotional and historical context behind Donne's argument. Okay, we've written introductions for the first 2 thesis statements, but what happens if the thesis includes more than one text? We have even more rhetorical situation details to consider. We still want to keep the introduction to just 2 or 3 sentences, so we'll need to be strategic to fit all that information in. What specific details do we need to include about each poet to introduce this thesis? Consider the details both poems share, as well as any differences you may need to highlight. Pause the video to select 3 or 4 details you want to include. Then write 2 to 3 introductory sentences to explain those details. What did you come up with? I noticed that both poems have the same Renaissance context and metaphysical elements, but Donne's poem is written as a farewell to a lover, and Herbert's as a reflection addressed to God. Here's one way we could write this. During the Renaissance, metaphysical poets like John Donne and George Herbert wrote for intellectual peers who valued emotional depth and thoughtful argument. Though Donne's A Valediction, Forbidding Mourning addresses a lover, and Herbert's Love, One addresses God, both explore the superiority of spiritual love. Not too bad. You may have chosen different details and phrased your sentences differently. That's great. There's not one perfect way to write an introduction, but you should always let your readers know which author and text you're analyzing and provide context to help them understand the rhetorical situation behind your thesis statement. You've definitely helped me introduce my reports for the language committee. So, it's time to write some introductions of your own. You are ready to write like a rhetorical analyst. Hey, hey.